I have a real problem. I can't see past 2030. By 2030, we literally have no understanding what economies are.
Will AI take away our jobs, or will it empower us to do things never before possible? How will the world look like in 10 years from now? These are some questions that all of us have. And we got a chance to speak with world's one of the leading macroeconomists, Mr. Raul Pal. He's known in the Web3 space by millions of people who follow him for his wonderful insights and learnings that he's drawn from the world of Web3. In fact, long before, he was amongst the very few handful of people in the world who could predict the 2008 crisis. And no wonder his expertise in the global macroeconomy understanding comes in handy for understanding the future of where we're headed. We had a lot of learning and fun in talking to him in this podcast, and I hope you have the same too. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Can I know the pronunciation? It is Raul. Raul.
Yeah,
Okay, Raul. Got it.
everybody pronounces it differently, so it doesn't matter.
Because in India, the most famous name is Rahul, but it's
Well,
definitely
I was
not.
because my dad's Indian, so it was going to be Rahul, but my mum's Dutch. My
Okay.
sister's Nisha, and so my mum was like, "We can't have two Indian kids' names," so they changed Rahul to this Spanish Portuguese spelling, which is Raoul. So,
Okay, wonderful.
where are you guys, by the way?
So in India, we are based out of Jaipur. You know Jaipur?
I know it well, yeah. I've spent a lot of time.
Have you been
in
to India
Rajasthan.
before?
Me? Oh God, many times. I lived in Calcutta when I was a kid. So yeah, I've been to Jaipur, I don't know, 6, 7 times. I've got some we've got some friends who have a place in Deoghar. So we spend a lot of time there. And Udaipur, and yeah, I spent a lot of time in Rajasthan. My family's mainly in Delhi, so
Wonderful. Then it would be a very interesting conversation since you know
So,
a lot about India.
so if we accidentally speak a little bit of Hindi, you'll reply back in Hindi. That means that, right?
just my Hindi's not good.
Okay.
So welcome, Raul. This is Rishabh and Nivedan. I run a channel called Labor Law Advisor. In short, we call it LLA, which is the most viewed finance channel in India, and it has recently crossed 1 billion views. And Nivedan,
So yeah, I'm Nivedan Rathi, and I run something called Future and AI. And Rishabh and I are partners in this journey because both of us share this excitement and passion for what's coming next. And this is the moment when, last year, I think it was Jan or Feb, we were constantly having long walks and chats about what is up in the AI world, what's so cool about Chat GPT. There's a new skill called prompting. Usually, it was all how it began. And then I've made products in AI before. I've done my thesis in my bachelor's in AI. So I have a background and I was super excited because I could see the potential. So I said, you know what? I feel so compelled to take the idea of how AI could empower us. Even if there are challenges, how do we educate ourselves and be prepared for them? That became a personal mission. And, we both of us joined forces. And now, we're doing making a lot of content around AI, educating people, making courses, as well as doing a lot of events where people can connect, collaborate, and make the next big thing. So that's what we do at Future and AI. And, it's really exciting that we're getting to speak with you right now and learn your angle on how the future is going to be.
These topics to me about between Web3 and AI and this nexus of technology, something I call the exponential age. We can throw in, robotics, EV. We can throw in so many different technologies that are all getting mass adoption phase all at the same time. Humanity's never gone through something like this. It's one hell of a journey we're about to go through.
Perfect. So thank you for your time. Would like to start with a formal introduction for our audience who have not read, or we have done our research, but for my audience who have not read about you, how would they know about Raul Paul? Who is Raul Paul, and what does he do?
So most people know me because I've got over 1 million Twitter followers, but my story is really one of finance. I've been in the financial markets for 34 years now. I started my career at Goldman Sachs. I'm actually half Indian myself. And I've mentioned that a few times. I've spent time in India, lived in India, spent a lot of time in India. But I was at Goldman Sachs, where I was started around the hedge fund sales business in equities and equity derivatives. And I was really lucky because that was the late 90s. And my clients were the world's most famous hedge fund managers. So I had on the phone every day Stan Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones, George Soros, all of these kind of people. That's where I cut my teeth. It was extraordinary meeting the greatest investors of all time. And they were my clients. So I learned a lot from them and eventually decided I wanted to go and run a global macro hedge fund. So global macro, for people who aren't aware, means we invest across the world, across all asset classes, wherever we think the action is. Could be emerging markets, could be US bonds, could be stocks, could be commodities, anything. So I ran a global macro hedge fund for GLG Partners, which was the largest hedge fund firm in Europe at the time. And then eventually I decided to opt out of the rat race and move to the Mediterranean coast of Spain, where I started writing my institutional research service, Global Macro Investor, which I've been writing now for 19 years, and it's read by the world's most famous hedge fund managers, asset allocators, family offices, high net worth investors. And it's it's an expensive kind of elite research service. And I was doing that in 2007, and I saw the financial crisis coming. I'd seen this whole thing building up. I wrote about it. A lot of my clients were people who were in the film The Big Short. There was a lot of famous people. We were all kind of at the epicenter of this and saw it coming. And then, if you remember, afterwards in Europe, we almost lost the entire banking system in 2010 to 12, and we almost lost half the governments. I mean, Greece defaulted, Spain almost defaulted. I mean, it was a terrible thing. In Cyprus, they took the money out of everybody's bank accounts in a process called bail-ins. So I had seen this mess developing, the mess of an over-leveraged financial system where we found out that nobody knows who owns anything. So when Lehman Brothers went under, there's all of this debt, but the collateral that has the claims on was this much. So what happens is when you go and ask for your money back, you just get a fraction back. And people were like, oh my God. And then the same happened in your personal bank accounts in Europe when banks went under. And at that point, I realized, okay, we've got a really big problem here. Nobody owns anything. So that started me on two journeys. One was the journey of how do I solve this? Is there a way that I could be involved in this? So I went around the world trying to start the world's safest bank with a group of family offices. And eventually it was in Texas that we had the ex-chairman of the FDIC, who kind of insures the banking system in the US, who was going to join us. We found a bank we were going to buy. And we went to the Dallas Fed and said, hey, listen, we've got this bank, and here's our idea is we're not going to allow any leverage. It's not a fractional reserve bank. We're just going to hold one-for-one assets with the Fed. And they're like, this is such a good idea. It's so needed. We're like, great, thank you. They said, there's no way we're going to give you a license. I said, really? And they said, no, because you'll take all of the deposits from the banking system. You can't have a bank that has no risk, because in which case you could get all the money. And so I was writing about this in Global Macro Investor, my frustrations of this, that they wouldn't even allow us to set up a bank that was safer for people. And a friend, this was 2012, and a friend tapped me on the shoulder and said, okay, you need to focus properly on Bitcoin. I'd looked at Bitcoin before. So I started my crypto journey in 2012. By 2013, I wrote the first ever macro strategy piece on how to value Bitcoin, which nobody had done before, and started investing back in 2013. And I've been on that journey ever since. The other part of my journey was when I was in the street in Spain, or talking to friends of mine in London, or friends' parents, and they would say to me, why didn't we know what a mess this all was? Why didn't we know the risks we were taking? And I thought about that. I noticed the rise of Occupy Wall Street that happened soon after the financial crisis. And I could see that there was a shift, that people didn't trust the institutions anymore and wanted to be empowered. So I thought, I can do something about this. And this was, again, 2013 was the idea of, let's start a video company where we're going to interview the world's most famous investors, because I knew them all from my previous life, the best analysts, strategists in long form, because everybody else was doing short form. We basically invented the long form finance podcast. It didn't exist before Real Vision. So we launched in 2014. And really, it's been a journey of people thanking us ever since, of changing their lives just by giving them information. So what we do at Real Vision is give people the knowledge, the tools, and the network to connect with each other to really help them succeed on their financial journey. So that was 2014 onwards, and that journey has interwoven where Web3 and the risks in the financial system and how to navigate it have been part of my journey, because Web3, or crypto particularly, I could see was the answer. By the time I got to bring it into relevancy to both of you, by the time, typical macro guy, I didn't really understand technology. I never really understood it. And then as I was understanding deeper how to analyze cryptocurrencies, I came across Metcalfe's law. And that became the framework of understanding of how to value cryptocurrencies for me. But what it also did was unlock technology. I now suddenly understood that these were all network businesses. And so I started digging in deeper into technology, and I found that we were about to enter a period that I called the exponential age, made quite well known as a thesis now, which was there was a lot of technologies, AI, distributed computing power, well, compute overall, AI, robotics, genetic sciences, Internet of Things. I mean, there's an endless list, EV technology, that all come together and solve similar problems, but they all interact with each other, right? The cheaper electricity gets, the faster the flywheel spins, because the more AI you can build, the more AI you can build, the more compute you can build, the cheaper electricity gets, and the whole thing starts spinning around and creates something very disruptive. So now all of these worlds have met between the macro and the broken economy, demographics, crypto and Web3, and technology. And that's where we are today.
Nice. So you have done so many ventures in past, and currently, I guess 3 or 4 ventures you are doing. Which one of these ventures is closest to you, and why?
So how many ventures? I lose track. The main business that I run is Real Vision. And, Real Vision has hundreds of thousands of members. We spread across a lot of social media. We're kind of a very core part of finance Twitter and crypto Twitter and technology Twitter and stuff like that. That's the main thing, because if we can't help people, then what are we doing this for? So that's one. Number two is I realized that, well, individuals need help, but guess what? The investors also didn't have access really to crypto, because many of them didn't want to hold underlying tokens. They might hold some Bitcoin, but they can see the space is much bigger than that. They're like, how the hell do I do this? I've got no edge in trying to buy small tokens based on a different thematic. I thought about this for a while. And I thought actually the best way to do it is to give it to hedge funds. So if you find the smartest hedge funds in the world, their job is to find what's going to outperform in this whole new kind of revolution. And so we started something which is a fund of funds. So we invest in about 12 to 14 different hedge funds. And that business is called XPAM, Exponential Age Asset Management. So we invest in hedge funds who invest in the underlying tokens. And the idea there is really to help people capture, and this is for, high net worth investors and institutions and stuff like that. The idea here is to capture this space going from $2 trillion to $10 trillion to $200 trillion when it becomes a fully mature asset class. That, it all sounds well and good saying that. How do you capture the returns that come in such a mega trend? So that's what we're trying to do there. What else do I do? I also have Global Macro Investor, which is the research service that I've been writing for around 20 years now. Those are my main 3 businesses. I also sit in the foundation of SUI, the big blockchain. So I wanted to go on that layer 1 journey with a really high quality team and just see how does that work from the inside as well.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So no, I think
I
you
also
mentioned.
I also have 2 more research services. One is called The Exponentialist, which I write with a colleague, David Matten, which is all around the exponential technologies. So a lot about AI and robotics and all this other stuff. And another one called the macro investing tool that kind of makes macro investing simpler. So lots of stuff.
No, this is wonderful. I would actually like to, pick up on the idea of the exponential age. This is something that resonated with me immediately the moment I read it. And I've been consuming the content of this kind and been forming my own ideas of what the future looks like. I want to know, you've made a bunch of predictions before, whether that be in terms of predicting the mortgage crisis in 2008, whether that be the price of Bitcoin, it'll shoot up to large numbers. I think you must have mentioned, I think $1 million is where it would go to, right? And we've seen how dramatically it's gone up. It's seen some cycles as well. So I want to know, given the multi-dimensional interactions that we have of all these new technologies that are coming up, what are the big predictions that you are making for the world in the next 10 or more years?
This is going to sound weird because my job is to live in the future and to see the future and figure out, how it gets there. I have a real problem. I can't see past 2030. I think we're about to hit an economic singularity. Not the singularity as we know, but an economic one. Why? You see, GDP growth is driven by...
Define economic singularity a little bit.
It's where the singularity is like the black hole. It's where the moment beyond which you can't forecast, your understanding of what it is almost completely collapses. So it becomes unforecastable. Any tools that you have from the past don't apply for the future. It's kind of all rules get rewritten.
Fair enough.
And what do I mean by that? It sounds very dramatic, and I don't mind a bit of hubris, but this is quite a ridiculous thing to say. But really, GDP growth, so the wealth of nations, is driven by three main factors. One, population growth. Why is India growing so fast? You have a young population, and so that drives growth, growing population. Two, productivity. India's having a productivity miracle because you're going from agrarian economy to a digital economy and leaping it overnight. Aadhaar and UPI and all this stuff has been incredible. Okay, great. Third part is debt. You can build debt, economic growth by debt growth. China did that, for example. So where are we today? Debt growth stopped in 2008. Most debt growth now servicing of old debts at government level. Most of the Western world has aging populations or even shrinking populations. Japan and China are both shrinking. Europe is kind of teetering on the edge. The US is still growing, but if they close the borders to immigration, they're going to have some real problems. So we have, and again, India is in a very different world, which is why it's in a secular uptrend in its own right, because it has all of the right elements. The West has all of the wrong elements right now, but all of the money is in the West. And productivity, old people aren't productive. Check with your parents versus yourself. You become more productive because old people become less productive. Okay, fine. What's this got to do with AI? Well, you are about to introduce infinite knowledge and infinite people. So what is AI? AI is, to me, the ability to scale knowledge infinitely and wisdom infinitely. If we say knowledge now, where we are today, AGI, wisdom. And we are very close to that. I think OpenAI have AGI already. Yeah. So we're about to scale what was the most human thing of all into infinite numbers. And then robots scale humans in infinite numbers. So when you put AI and robots, you have changed the population dynamic in a way we cannot simply understand. So if we look at Amazon right now, Amazon in the US or globally, I think it's about 1 million workers.
Yeah.
But they're at 750,000 robots now. Those robots work 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They never complain. They don't ask for a pay rise. In fact, they basically ask for a pay cut because all technology is deflationary. Okay, these things are staggering. We also have the ability to solve cheaper energy. And if productivity is the units of output per unit of energy, per kilojoule. Well, if I look at the electricity price, I use the UK electricity price because it's the longest one I can find. It goes back to about 1950. It's basically stable, right? We've not really changed the cost of electricity over time. But EV, geothermal, solar, geothermal, a whole bunch of these things are lowering the cost. It's just not scalable yet, right? We're seeing, I mean, India has the world's largest solar plant, and that's that Ambani's built. But what we will see is obviously scalable nuclear as well. So if we lower the cost of electricity from, let's call it a price of 100, whatever that is, units, down to 50, you've doubled productivity.
Interesting.
If you don't lower it down to 25, you've tripled productivity. Okay, so you triple productivity and add infinite people, plus AI is more productive than humans. The speed at which this was happening, I was thinking this was going to be a 2035 event, but I followed the space very closely, and I'm like, by 2030, we literally have no understanding what economies are. What is a company? If you follow the AI companies, it reminds me so much of the token economy, where, let's say, the ICO business, where new business ideas start, they flourish, they get some idea, they disappear, others succeed, but it happens at a very quick rate. We're seeing this in AI, is people are coming up with amazing new ideas. OpenAI kills them in 3 months. If it's not OpenAI, it's Anthropic. If it's not Anthropic, it's Google. If it's, it's like, okay, we have a rate of creation and destruction, a speed of which we have never seen before, except in crypto space. And I'm like, well, how does even VC investing work? How does investing work in this world? What does investing mean when you have an AGI? How do you make money? So it's not just the question of, oh, how are we going to get paid for our work? It's much bigger than that. It's like, we're going to create a world that we can't fathom. There's a group, Nick Bostrom at Oxford, wrote some famous books on this, but there's a whole team of people who look at this, and they've got an economist who started looking at saying, well, listen, it's not that difficult to imagine that global GDP can start doubling in a year or even in a week. And I'm like, it's true. And that's not the prediction, but the prediction is we have no idea. So 2030 to me, so I think about, what does this mean for all of us? And the answer we have to say honestly is we don't know. But what I do know is we need to make as much money as we can between now and 2030.
That sounds reasonable.
Because if we don't know, we don't want to be disrupted by everything.
Yeah.
You want to give yourself some comfort, because this is going to be a very complicated time to live through. You can either embrace it or reject it, but it's still going to happen. So the best thing to do is secure yourself the best you can in the meantime.
So make money now, otherwise who knows what will happen after 2030s.
That's the general thing I got to. I'm like, what is a business then?
Right.
How can we, I'm already building an AI using a video version of myself trained on all of my 20 years of stuff, plus all of the videos, plus my Twitter feed. So in 3 years' time, I won't be showing up, you won't be showing up, it'll just be our AIs. What does that even mean?
Right. So I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but when we hear opinion like this, a question of course comes in our mind that, say, if AGI will take over, and it is happening sooner, much sooner than we expect. Right now, the primarily companies distribute their income in forms of employment, salaries, and which is one of the most significant expense in the balance sheet of most companies. But with advent of AI and robotics, if, as you already mentioned, that the Amazon has comparable robots versus human workforce, and this will even speed up in coming future, then what will happen to the employment market or job market? Won't it concentrate wealth with a very, very small group of people? And will some economies think about universal basic income ideas for everyone to sort of control that descent or revolution, you can say?
Especially as an economist, I think I would love to get your view on what does post AGI, and we understand that we're not asking you for predictions on this, but let's say if it happens, then what does employment mean, and what is the place of UBI in this? What's your take on that?
So firstly, if the robots plus AI are human replacements, then we should tax them like humans.
Interesting.
Right. So if they're creating economic output, then we should tax them. So then the larger group of humanity benefits. So if GDP growth goes up massively because we've got these new super humans in the workforce, fabulous. We should all benefit. So, can that lead to universal basic income? Yes. But here's the bit of Web3 magic. I also believe in something that Yatsui and I have talked about, which is from Animoca, which is universal basic equity. What does that mean? Tokenization allows ownership of networks. Never happened before. Right? The mobile phone network, you can invest in, Geo, for example, but you couldn't own the network solely. So you're owning the equity in the company and all the other things that it does. And it's not the overall network because there's several phone companies in India or around the world. In fact, thousands of them. What is the underlying value of the entire global mobile phone infrastructure? I don't know, several trillion, right? We couldn't capture that. Here we are at this new intersection of the web and finance and this kind of value chain. The blockchain technology is the entire foundational layer of the new digital world. And so we get to own it. We get to own the core infrastructure. So, okay, fine. But what becomes really interesting is if you look at where the world is going, we are becoming, well, we're doing what humans do, is we are social creatures. The one thing we do is love to form groups, whether it's physical or now online. Crypto Twitter is, I don't know, there's several million people talking about crypto all day. You'll see it in Discord channels. You'll see it in Reddit. You'll see it in different places. You'll see it on YouTube. Okay, great. So now you have people passionate about stuff. Let's go to an example people will understand really well. Cricket in India. It's gigantic. Now, what you've got there is you've got culture. Sport is culture. It's also entertainment. It's also social, right? It's the sort of stupid, dumb shit humans do, is argue about which cricket team's the best. I mean, it's irrelevant, but it's not. To us, it's a thing, right? Now, what we will see is that fans becoming part of a larger economy, like a cricket team or cricket itself, or Taylor Swift. Or Disney. These are huge cultural things of which people want to be part of. So what's different about a network? If you're incentivized by participating in those networks that you want to be, those communities, well, you're now incentivized to help grow them or engage people. So now you've got a purpose. It could be for your cricket team. It could be for Taylor Swift. It could be for whatever it may be. It could be your AI group that creates value and does different things and seeds businesses, whatever it is. Universal basic equity is the ability to have ownership over these communities yourself, which Web 2 didn't allow. So I think that is very interesting. I think humans will solve the different ways. I think humans are social creatures by nature, and they will find social ways of interacting that create value, economic value for humans.
Okay. There's a clarification I want to understand this a little deeper. You said we can own a network, we can own a culture, have a piece of it. So, number one, what does owning a culture or a cricket, ecosystem, not just the team, mean in the first place in the new world? And second, are there any proven examples of a large population owning beyond the idea of, let's say, me holding some shares in a big private company? And how is this different?
So, okay, let's go back to a bit of economics here and accounting. On most companies' balance sheets, particularly big companies, they have something called intangibles. That's brand. That's what makes something special. Things like Disney has huge amounts of intangibles, but when you look at the company, it's not as valuable as probably the cultural value of Disney to everybody around the world. And that doesn't appear on a balance sheet. It's difficult to value. It might appear in the share price because people realize there's something more, but it's difficult. When you create a tokenized economy, you're actually turning intangibles into tangibles because they're now tangible, because they're tokenized. So what does that mean? The easiest example, I think, is a pop star. So if you have let's say Taylor Swift, the world's biggest pop star currently.
Mm-hmm.
So Taylor Swift is in a weird world where she doesn't really get paid for her music. In fact, at least 80% of the economics gets taken away before she receives it by middlemen. Spotify stream it pretty much for free. Yeah, she's of the mega group that will make money from Spotify, but almost nobody in the industry does. So what does she have to do to monetize her business of Taylor Swift? It's what she's just doing now. She has to go on tour, which is a physically demanding, difficult thing to do. And they have to go on tour. Very expensive to do, but she can make a lot of money from it. Because she doesn't make money from actually making music anymore. So she now makes money from entertaining people in physicality. Because even if you create music videos, they're free. I mean, there's no way. So, and then it's merchandise. And that's basically it. But if Taylor Swift were to use NFTs, let's say, as a start, where she created NFTs of her album cover art, and her fans could buy those, she now has a direct relationship with the fan. There's no middleman in the way of that. It's Taylor Swift and the fan. Let's say the fan buys the NFT of this cover art, and they're limited, so they're a bit more valuable. You know, people love collecting stuff, whether it's, you know, memorabilia, stuff that matters to humans. So then if she offered those people rights to tickets first, because they're her super fans, okay, the value of those NFTs goes up massively. So now you've got NFT holders who are super fans actually making money from the network of Taylor Swift. So because they've got actually now a stake in Taylor Swift's economy. Before, they could only be participants.
Technically, I could create a like a market on top of this. I'm sure there are. The centralized ones, they may not be my direct ownership. There is a middleman. But if this thesis was true, I would see some of Taylor Swift's ownership being given out as, you know, private accounts or private entities assigned to the way I book a flight ticket, and it's mine in that moment. Yes, can it be hacked? Agreed. It can be potentially, right? So this is a usual question I have with my friends in Web3, and I've struggled with this for a long time. So I'm hoping that, you know, I would get that finally, that if that is the case, there should be something that exists like that in the centralized world, which is proven, and then it moves to decentralized because it's far better and ownership matters to people far, far more.
So I just want to add one more point on this. For example, in India, if you own a Tata share, then you get 20% discount on Taj hotels. The Taylor Swift example sort of sounds similar. This could have been possible with the current technology as well, like giving shares or some membership, but it was never adopted at a massive scale. Why it will be adopted in future when the organization or the figure or the culture can own the 100% equity and still earn massively? Why will they do it for common folks?
Yeah, these are two questions, different questions. Yeah.
Firstly, why should Taylor Swift give away her equity? That's not what she's doing. She's giving away or selling participation in the Taylor Swift culture.
It's like merch.
It's like merch. It's exactly like merch. Merch plus loyalty points.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So why hasn't this been done at scale? I mean, loyalty points have been done at gigantic scale. I mean, Starbucks are building on Web3 their loyalty points. We know that. The difference is Taylor Swift cannot sell securities in India, Brazil, Nigeria, London, New York, Switzerland, Singapore, Philippines. It's impossible. There's literally no way can she create something that is accessible to anybody because of securities laws and how it works. But what you have is tokenization, even if it's just an NFT. And we're seeing this. Snoop Dogg has been experimenting this. A lot of people have been experimenting this. Is okay, if I now sell directly to my fans things that they perceive to be valuable, that gives them rights within the community, is that valuable? And the answer has been so far, yes. Has it been done at gigantic scale? No, but Formula One are pushing the way with this. We're seeing a whole bunch of sports teams in the United States working on this. People have NFT experiences. Has somebody fully tokenized their economy? Not yet. People have tried, not really worked yet. But, don't expect Rome to be built in a day. The point being, just to go back to the original point, the point being is humans are very inventive and we find ways in times of great change. And we will figure out ways to create economic value for ourselves in a changing landscape. It might happen a bit too quick and create a lot of societal problems. I get that. But in the end, I think there's a ability of humans to be humans is actually valuable in itself. I thought it was going to be creativity was going to be the last job that got killed by AI. It was the first. I mean, I never saw that coming, right? I just thought, well, obviously, I would say to friends' kids, 3 years ago, it's like, yeah, just being in the creative industry, you'll be fine. First jobs to get shot were the creative ones. I'm like, okay, I give up.
Yeah, this has been funny. Usually, this is what I talk about in my webinars and sessions that I do everywhere. That everyone anticipated the manual labor to go first, and then the knowledge workers, the analysts to go later, much later, right? The self-driving car would be somewhere in the middle, and then finally the artists, the painters, the video people, they would go, and it's so ridiculous. It's like it's like someone's laughing in our face.
It's going to be the plumber is the most valuable man in the world,
Yeah.
right? The person to come and fix your toilet is going to be the most valuable person.
Yeah, the person who grows potatoes is up next, right? So I think no wonder all this trend of people going nomad and living in the middle of nowhere, learning survival skills. It seems like all of that is going to pay off.
Well, I mean, I live over here in the Cayman Islands, and the Cayman Islands is a small. It's 3 islands. They're flat, salty, hot rocks in the middle of nowhere. Of course, it's beautiful. It's the Caribbean Sea. It's turquoise sea, and But the island I first built on was Little Cayman, and I still have my house there. And that is, I'm over in Grand Cayman today, and that is an island of 150 people, and it's just nature. And I kind of saw that the world was going to get more complicated, and I thought something like that removes you from 90% of the stress of that. And even in an exponential age of technology, when we're all going to be filled overwhelmed at various points, to be on a little island in nature with 150 people, where the sun comes up, the sun comes down, the tide goes in, the tide goes out, there's fish in the sea, and the birds fly overhead.
It's like the clock is reset. The clock is reset in some ways.
You can go back 100,000 years.
Yeah.
And that's very nice. So I think a part of all of this is nature becomes more of a premium asset than it ever was, because everything else is going to be so complex.
Right. So you discuss a lot about cryptocurrency. You have been an investor, evangelist. Crypto has been around for last decade or so, and it has a lot of advantages: decentralization, privacy. But for a common Joe, average middle class, say Indian person, all we see is a place which can an asset class which can double my money overnight. Do you see, and even the governments are wary of this particular asset class because it will reduce their ability to sort of tax and track those transactions. India specifically have not been a proponent of crypto, and they've introduced some taxes which almost kills all the intraday trading, especially in the crypto space. So, do you see cryptocurrency in say near future, say by 2030, becoming sort of mainstreams? It has been, it is being used in uh, sort of in some cases of money laundering, underground web spaces. But do you see it becoming mainstreams? I go and buy a pizza using my Bitcoin. Will it ever happen, which was promised 10 years earlier?
No. And I'll tell you why. India does not want you to use Bitcoin because you live in the nation state of India. You have to use their currency and their laws. When you live in the nation state of Bitcoin, use its currency and its laws. These are actually digital nation states, and they operate in very similar ways. And once you apply economic frameworks to them, they work. But so you're living in two states, or call it the crypto land and fiat world. So no, you won't get to do that. But the moment you live in crypto land, you can do whatever you want, and you use your currency. We're finding that now. But if we see where the the bigger trend, people need to understand here.
Can you explain that with an example? What is crypto land and what is fiat land? Like fiat land is quite clear. What is crypto land?
Crypto land is if we take the states of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and the other big countries, right? They all have their own system of currency. They all have their own system of taxation, which is gas fees. Some of them have fully developed financial markets like Ethereum, which has a decentralized finance, which is a banking system. It has a government yield curve. They all have monetary policy, which is the tokenization schedule. You have people building on that economy. So you have companies building using the infrastructure of that economy, and those are the applications layers. We're finding particularly in Ethereum, and now Solana, but more Ethereum, that we use it as a currency in Ethereum world. We buy NFTs, they're priced in ETH. That's really interesting. That was not something I expected to happen so fast. But we think of things in crypto land priced in the domestic currency of crypto land, much like you would think about whatever you pay for in rupees in India. So this is more in line with what I was talking about how humans organize themselves online. Is we are societal creatures by nature. We've created these digital societies. So these are these nation states within which maybe the Taylor Swift economy but digital economy can run within this. So, okay. Now, as you're scaling the network, who's frozen there? Okay, sorry, somebody froze. As you're scaling the network, we get to benefit from the network growing. That's like being investors in Amazon as they built out their business. Okay, great. Nothing wrong with making money from investing in a network and being an active participant. The more people in the network, the more activity, the more secure the networks are, the more scale, the more use cases. So this is all good. The more the price goes up, the more people can build, and you're growing an economy. But India is building a CBDC. It will be out in the next 2 years. It will be built on blockchain technology. So we're pretty used to UPI, but CBDC is basically the cash replacement, the final mile. And the idea, I think, is that you have a kind of a digital representation of rupee notes, and you can just...
That has already been launched this year, yes.
It has been launched.
Pilot version, it's launched. Yes.
That's right, in the pilot version, but it's not fully rolled out yet. But this is on blockchain rails. And we will see a lot of the applications, both at the state level. In the end, in 10 years' time, all Indian equities be listed on blockchain technology. Why? Because it's a much more efficient way of managing transaction processes, settlement layers, all of that stuff. So why would it not? When I speak to pretty much every single financial institution, they're like, yeah, soon as we get regulatory clarity, we want to move everything across to these rails. Okay, that's super interesting. Now, the average person won't have a clue. Like, I have no idea what computer you're on, what mobile phone network, what Wi-Fi network, how you're doing it, and I don't care. I just click on the Zoom, you click on the Zoom, it works. Now, if we could have owned all of the technology layer of the internet and had a share in it, we'd have made a lot of money. But we didn't. It was a public good. This is still a public good, but we get to participate in it. So the people's idea, the kind of CryptoPunk idea of this private system of money will work in the digital world. It will not really work in your physical world, in fiat land, because why? You're living in somebody else's economy. And they have certain rules, much like there are certain rules. You know, you can't buy a ETH NFT with Solana. If you do, you have to swap it, and you're going to have to pay somebody a fee to facilitate that. It's all the same thing here. And it's a very interesting thing. If you think through the US ETF, which is a very big deal, why is it a big deal? It's like there is 8 trillion of wealth held by the investment advisors in the US. And that's actually the people who advise the US population of 380 million people. Very wealthy population, as we know. What these are trade agreements between fiat world and crypto land. These are not new residents in crypto land. I'm a resident because I have wallets. Wallets is like I have a stake of the real estate. You know, I'm part of it. These people aren't. This is a free trade agreement, and this is like the WTO agreement between fiat world and crypto land. And what they get to do is participate with hot money flows into this economy. Much like when we opened China up into the WTO. Now, foreign direct investment, which is the other part of the investment equation, is VC, right? That's direct investment. You're directly investing in the economy of this crypto land. But this ETF is a free trade agreement, and it's allowing billions, $10 billion so far of capital to flow into this new thing. Now, the capital comes in as hot money, but it gets recycled into opportunities and other things. So we are seeing the bridges being built at every level between old system and new system. And that was always my thesis. There were not parallel systems, there were converging systems. And the converging end state is all of it's going on blockchain rails. And here's another great example of how it works. A friend of mine, who was a long-term global macro investor subscriber, and someone I knew from Goldman Sachs days, was running the treasury trading for one of the, or maybe the biggest Australian bank. He's just retired. And I met up with him recently and said, what have you been up to? He's like, I spent the last 3 years in crypto. I'm like, assuming it was for his private investments. He goes, yeah, I've done a lot of that, but at the bank. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? National Australia Bank, crypto. He's like, oh, we've been building stablecoins in 5 different currencies. I'm like, why do you need to build stablecoins? You're an Aussie bank. You transfer money. You're at the epicenter. He goes, no, you don't understand. Australians invest abroad. Most of the global equity markets, specifically the US, Europe, Canada, are going to T+1 settlement, which is next day I settle for buying something. They were T+3. Foreign exchange markets are T+2. Because you're in Australia, you lose another day just because of time zone mess. So he's like, we can't settle. Australia can't settle for the US equities or bonds that it buys. So we've got no way of doing it because the foreign exchange markets. So we have to figure out the most efficient rails, which is stablecoins.
Yes. Okay.
Really interesting.
It seems like Raul, if we're getting you right, is one, there are going to be 2 parallel worlds that we're going to live in for a while, where it may potentially merge into one, which is all blockchain. So the 2 worlds that you're talking about is like the physical world where your country's economy or monetary decisions are going to affect whether you can pay for your pizza with your fiat or with your crypto, right? And there's going to be a digital world that potentially cuts across the entire globe, across nations, and there would be digital economies parallelly running there, correct? And we would have a transaction fee between the two of them, and that's how they sustain for a long time. Am I getting you right on this?
That is at some level right. The bigger level is every day the world is more digital than yesterday.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
And so the entire structure of the internet and how we capture value has a real problem. Everything in a digital world goes to zero in value because you can make infinite amounts. Like we're going to make infinite amounts of humans. So we go to zero in value. So we need to find new ways of having value, which is what we were talking about before. Cloud compute, email, I mean, it's just endless. They all go to zero because technology just increases productivity until it just disappears. Breakthrough of blockchain technology, the single biggest breakthrough for me is in the digital world, you can create scarcity. So I can create a one-of-one NFT. It is now scarce. So now it has value. It also is the whole contract layer. If you go back to human society, at societal level, everything we do is a contract. If you think about it, everything from buying a coffee to me appearing on this to buying a house, but everything is a contract, right? Contracts is how we structure society. Anything that is a valuable contract will go into blockchain, obviously, because we don't need all the middlemen. Now, that also means your cricket tickets will be NFTs. Why will they not? Because it means that there's no ticket scalp in the middle. You can directly sell them if you can't go to the game. Or you can keep them as mementos that I was at the game, the India-Pakistan game when we won, that's valuable. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that are going to get unlocked within this that people can't yet foresee.
I see. And would it also be fair to say that the fact that an Australian bank, the example that you mentioned there, if they start settling in stablecoins and so on, and other big institutions have an incentive to reduce their costs of operation, to reduce the time it takes to make these transactions happen and settled, will these be the push towards the larger economy because they've started adopting it? So the population now has a greater incentive to adopt it. And why do they need to transact in stable versus my dollar all the time? Instead, I'll start using stable directly when settled. Is that a push?
Yeah. So what was really interesting, there's one of the biggest market making trading firms in crypto in Asia is a group called QCP out of Singapore. They're good friends of mine. And I asked them once, this was like 18 months ago, I'm like, who the hell is using stable coins? What's it really being used for? And so he's like, okay, firstly, the world is run by the Eurodollar market. Eurodollars are dollars available outside of the US. And a lot of the world's system, all trade is done in dollars, right? India always needs dollars to pay for oil, let's say. So that's the Eurodollar market, the borrowing and circulation of dollars outside of the US. Right, it's not available to people. Go to a village in India, in Bihar, and say, hey, buy dollars. They're like, I don't have no idea. There's no way I can do that. It's literally impossible. Mm-hmm. Now, it's easy. You just press it on your bloody phone and you've got dollars in your wallet. Right, okay, that is incredible. Okay, so there's that. So there's a ton of people using this. I get my hair cut here in the Cayman Islands, and there's a whole bunch of Filipinos who run the barber place. And they're all crypto mad punters. They're always trading crypto. I'm like, why are you guys so into crypto? It's like, oh, because we started with stablecoins, sending money home to our mums or to our wives. And I'm like, oh, wow. And he's like, yeah, it's so much easier. We're not going to play Western Union or try and transfer banks. So we just send money. So, my mum, my wife, my whatever has got it set up and it's done. And then the QCP guy said, but that's still not the biggest use. I'm like, well, who's the big user then? We're thinking, China capital flight, money laundering, whatever, right? He's like, it's corporations. It's like Indonesian corporations trading with Chinese corporations. I'm like, really? He said, well, the problem is Indonesian rupiah, slightly closed economy, like India is. So capital, you need to apply to do the transactions. So it's a complicated, slow process just to do your regular business. the Chinese side also have capital controls. So both sides have capital controls. The foreign exchange cross rate doesn't exist. So there is no rupiah RMB cross. So you have to go into dollars and everything else. So all of the cost of transactions, like 12% for an Indonesian to do a deal. And so they just use stable coins. And then I've just heard, so that's been happening in Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, with China and several others. And my guess is India is probably within that as well. But now I'm seeing Brazil doing huge amounts of this as well. Because all of these people with volatile, who use dollars for a settlement layer, but have their own currencies are starting to do this. So super interesting because people are just doing it on their own.
What I'm taking away from this, and I'm trying to oversimplify this so that, people who are watching this also kind of get the takeaway in short as well, is two reasons why the world of blockchain and crypto will be out there in everyone's hand is because one, it makes things super accessible. And second, it makes things cheaper. I mean, the fact that you can transact without losing a bunch of it to fees all the time, like 12% there. So if it's cheaper and more accessible, there is no reason why it should not be able to beat the fiat currencies that we have today. Is that a fair oversimplification?
You're missing one component.
View on this?
You're missing one component.
Which is
also the behavioral economics, the behavioral incentives are so much so that you can own a share of the network and you promote the network and the network grows.
I see.
So we're actually
let's add
causing,
a third one.
Somebody said talking about Bitcoin, we've memed a $1.2 trillion asset into existence. And that's what we have. I mean, it doesn't really have value. Yes, the blockchain technology layer has value, everything else, but like everything, we only believe Bitcoin to be valuable because we have said it so. And what we've done is memed that, which is mimetic storytelling, which is how everything works. All religions, all government, all society, everything. And we've just done that. The power of us being incentivized. Why? Because you own a Bitcoin and it goes up. It's genius. This is the scale of this. Imagine if Facebook had given free Facebook shares to every person who used it. They would have A, created more wealth than any other companies ever created in history, and B, they would have grown faster than any other company ever in history. That is why this is the fastest growing adoption of any technology the world has ever seen outside of AI, and the largest wealth generating machine the world has ever seen. We've never seen anything like it. And what is so great is I do a lot of these podcasts with kids in India or people around the world. They're all making money. It's not about rich people. It's not about the institutions. It's about leveling the playing field for everybody to participate in economic growth in the near future, which we've never had. It's so exclusive. Making money is an exclusive pursuit. This destroyed all of it and gave it back to the hands of the individuals. In fact, what's so hilarious is we have managed to front run the entire financial system because we know they're coming and building on this stuff, but we got to own it 10 years before they turned up. Even today, they've barely started.
Interesting. Let's talk about, we had a couple of questions around your take on India, right? We've spoken a little bit about it already, but, as specifically as a global investor in all this changing landscape, what role do you see India playing in the future on a more global stage? How optimistic are you?
So about 10 years ago, having known where the issues of the world lay, I got a map of the world out and said, okay, I'm going to take out every excess indebted country and everybody with an aging population. And I looked at the map of the world and it was like, that's fascinating. Sure, there's a bunch of African countries, but they were very early in their GDP growth. They will become more important, Nigeria, others. But really, it was the old monsoon trade winds across the Indian Ocean with India at the middle. And then I looked at it and it's like India at the middle of the world. And that's not because I'm Indian. You know, Indians will always put themselves at the middle of the world, but it's not that. It's like, here's this super economy. It trades to the east and to the west. And it always has for literally 5,000 years. So you look at the Swahili coast of Africa all the way down, right? That's the monsoon trade winds that cause that, the spice route. You look at the trade with Indonesia, you look at the trade down to Singapore, and then up to Iran, and then the Silk Route that went all the way across to Morocco and into Europe. That is still in existence, obviously. So anyway, all of those countries exhibit the same demographics. They happen to be mainly Muslim countries because Islam seemed to be the kind of trade religion that spread fast around those coasts. Okay, great. So what we have is a world with this massive populous nation in the middle. There's a bunch of other really big populous nations, Indonesia, etc. We have all of the natural resources held within this region, particularly all the oil, all of the gas, you know, all of that stuff. You know, it's mainly self-sufficient in food. We have financial centers in Mumbai, Singapore, Cape Town, a bunch of others. So it's kind of got all the elements there. And the population is wildly different. The average age of an Indian is 28. And the average age in most of the other countries is like 48 or 30, well, call it 40. Right. So you have a wildly different population of young people across the entire region. And young people are motivated by economic improvement. They want to improve their lives. So that's why the US and Europe did so well after World War II. It's like it was full of young people, and now it's full of old people, and they have different things. So that's why India will continue with high growth rates. Also, so will the Middle East. So will most of these countries. You know, the whole region also has its own Silicon Valley. I mean, one is Israel itself, and the other is within India as well. You know, so we've got infinite people, infinite opportunities, young people, everything is there. The technology's held there, you have all the resources. That's where India fits. And geopolitically,
AGI, right? I just want to interrupt you here. Then comes AGI, let's say, our advanced AI that comes in, and a lot of the population advantages that we have pretty much become redundant, don't they?
I don't know, because, you know, India still has a appalling infrastructure. It's getting better, right? Every time I go, the roads are better, the stuff is better, but it's still bad, right? There's still no public sewerage system. There's still, you know, the electricity system is still fragile. It's just not great. So it is still cheaper. I remember days of old in India that they didn't want to bring tractors to build roads because it was cheaper to employ people who would take baskets of gravel on their head. Right, that is changing, but it's not changed yet. It is still cheaper to pay farmers than have. I mean, yes, up in Punjab you will have large mechanized farms, obviously, but generally speaking, it's still cheaper because there's an abundance of labor. In the other countries, there's lack of abundance of labor. So I'm not wildly worried yet. Yes, where do all the Indian kids coming out of university do? I don't know yet, but India's still very far behind most economies in some respects and leap forwards in others. And that's also a very interesting thing, is when you can leap forwards in technology and ignore, you know, whole messes that people have created or economies have created for 30 years, you know, stuff like UPI and Aadhaar, people don't understand how big a deal that was. And most countries haven't caught up. It was a staggering leap forward by India. And, you know, India will do that. I think, you know, people like Ambani is, you know, some of the stuff that he's doing is extraordinary. You know, the mobile phone penetration in India is unlike any other country in the world. The cost of data on mobile phone network is like unlike any other country in the world. So yes, I don't worry about the AGI bit yet. I really do think there was a golden age for India, where it will be the fastest major growing economy in the world for 10, 20 years. After that, we'll see, because, you know, India has a great propensity to screw everything up by politics and other stuff. So let's just assume that it will do that. But you know, look, I would say the next 10 years certainly belongs to India as a major economic power, and probably 20 years. It's also been a secular trend. It's been one of the best performing stock markets in the world. It's, in fact, the only emerging market that really goes up. You know, it's sucking in a lot of capital. A lot of Indians are coming home, the Indian diaspora.
Yep.
So
We
yes,
see it,
I
we
remain.
see it around us all the time. People are coming back.
Yeah, but you know, there's real problems with ownership of property rights. We've got these terrible things. We have still inherent deep bureaucracy. It's so miserable to operate within. We still have, appalling infrastructure for some things. It's fine. We can now get trucks around the country because the roads are much better. But, you know, open sewers and, you know, just inexcusable things for a country like India that somebody needs to solve. So there's a lot to get done. But don't forget, you fix the sewerage system in India, that's a massive investment in the economy. That money goes in the economic flywheel. It changes people's lives. They don't have to operate in the same, you know, it's all coming. So yeah, it's good.
So they're saying, thoda hai, thode ki zarurat hai. So there's a long way to go, but the future, at least there's a possibility that future for India looks bright. We have final few minutes and would like to ask few quick questions from you. So
Go for it.
say for a 20 to 30 age bracket person who is not much into finance, what books, 3-4 books you would recommend him to read, or podcasts you would recommend him to listen other than Real Vision, of course?
How curious are they?
They are like me, want to learn.
Hungry.
Hungry, yes.
For sure.
My first piece of advice is go on Twitter. There is the town hall where everybody is conversing about this stuff all day. And don't worry, it'll be super confusing. That's okay. But you'll pick up bits. Now, Twitter has the Grok AI, so you can actually ask it questions like, what the hell is Raoul talking about? Right? So that's a bit of a superpower.
Yeah.
Start to develop an understanding and a curiosity about what part of investing is interesting to you. The issue is to teach people to invest like Paul Tudor Jones or George Soros. Maybe not that interesting with crypto. So we need to find what kind of investor you are. But let's assume that crypto is something that interests you. Then there is a group of relatively big podcasting companies that do that, whether it's Real Vision, Bankless, Blockworks, that find the content. Try not to rely on the Instagram influencer. They tend not to be serious. So what you're trying to see is this person on Twitter, are they engaging with the serious people in the space? Does their podcast get lots of traction? Then you start to put the connections. Most people will start, well, I found this guy in India who says on Instagram who says I'm going to be rich. That is not how you do it. These people have to show up every day and prove themselves because there's too many scam artists. So you need to see them proving themselves. So I would start, honestly, Twitter is where all of crypto lives. It is where every single person, you are 1 degree of separation from the founders of Polygon to Solana to Vitalik. I mean, you can message these people and they respond. To the biggest artists in the world, you can ask questions and people will help you. People really care about helping in crypto. If you say, hey, listen, I'm new here. How does this work? People will help. That's amazing. It's like being in Silicon Valley and being around all these people for lunch, and they're there. You know, we're very lucky. It's still a small space. So that's the biggest hack. Easiest way, just go and follow me and see who I interact with and who I follow. I'm not one of these people who follows 10,000 people. You know, follow maybe 1,000 people, generally at the intersection between macro crypto and tech, exponential age tech. So within that, or the other one is actually Real Vision has its own list. So just go to the Real Vision list and just add that to your lists. And then you'll be able to follow all the people who've been on Real Vision. Another really easy hack to get going.
Yep. If I were to ask you this, I would also ask you for a blacklist. It seems like there's a lot of distraction and a lot of scam floating around. And honestly, the idea that I have to sift through a lot of shit to come through something nice is discouraging. So let's say, and that's a personal question. It's not something I'm asking for others. Is what do I avoid? What do I run away from?
You're right, and we should have. I'm going to ask the Real Vision people to do a curate. Well, the Real Vision list is curated. So if you go to the
I
Twitter
understand,
list,
but a blacklist says definitely run away, right? It's like taking a stance and saying definitely wrong, definitely scam.
The problem is the community's pretty good at policing this stuff. So you'll see people pointing it out. And then it's, you have to just check who follows them. Are there real people following them, interacting, thought leaders in the space? If there's no thought leaders, most likely to be a scam. I can't filter it for you easily. And don't forget, so many people, it's a very tribal space. It's like cricket teams. It's like, they're shit, we're the best. So they will tell you they're all a scam. Those Ethereum people, those Solana people, or those what. So it's very difficult because everyone's
That's
got
what I mean by
opinion.
chaos. The way you can curate a great to follow list. I mean, I would love if you could put that out once and say that's listen, don't worry about the community people, we're the experts. Here are the people we can strongly take a stance on. Would that be something you would actually go out and do it? I don't want to rely on the community. That's a lot of work.
So I think if you go to the Real Vision Twitter, it's all there. That you can just click on that list, use that list. At least it's going to keep you on the right side of, and then you can add people to it.
Okay. Got it. And yeah, on the AI front, there's if I were to ask you which company are you betting on, if you were to put all your wealth in one company, which one do you want to put all in?
Google, Meta, OpenAI.
But you can only pick one, and then you can probably tell me the rest if you've missed out something.
I wouldn't do any of them because I don't know who wins this, who gets regulated. I don't know anything. And it's not even clear. NVIDIA might be the leader because everybody has to use their rails. But there's a lot of people incentivized to take a slice of that profit pie too. So I think the space changes a lot. I'm struggling to see how OpenAI don't win the next 5 years, but we can't even participate in it. We can't even invest in it. There's literally nothing we can do, which is also really frustrating compared to crypto, right? Here is probably the most profound technological breakthrough mankind has ever developed, and we can't even invest in it. How's that fair? I don't get it. How's that fair for people? So you're going to accrue to a few people. So, I mean, obviously Microsoft do well, but you're not going to make a lot of money because Microsoft's a $3 trillion company. So the answer is I really don't know. I think it's uninvestable as a space, is my viewpoint. It's uninvestable as a space, and I think there's too much disruption within the space. I think VCs are going to lose a fortune in this space, and yet some people are going to make an absolute fortune by building in the space. But it's hard. OpenAI, it worries me with OpenAI. I think they're already using AGI to build the company and their product roadmap. It's, because if you listen to Sam, he talks about it, and what they're doing is they're making the incremental steps to basically say, oh, by the way, we're now at AGI. I mean, stuff like Sora is mind-blowing. I mean, the stuff that they're bringing out is mind-blowing. And it's happening at an iteration. How many people at OpenAI? 500? This doesn't make sense. It literally doesn't make sense how you could ship that much product in that short period of time. It's impossible. So what you're doing is you are building the code base, the product go-to-market strategy, the corporate strategy using AGI. I'm sure of it.
Wow. We're going to clip that out.
I guess.
Yeah. So these are the questions we had for you given the time we had. I honestly, when we were researching for the podcast, we had a lot of questions, and it took us a while to kind of shortlist and say, okay, let's not ask this one and that one. So whatever we had the opportunity, you've answered those beautifully, and the amount of clarity you bring to this conversation is immense. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Not at all. I mean, just remember, none of us have the answers here. We're all trying to figure it out. And that's why I love conversations like this, right? None of us know. We're all trying to figure it out. We have to test each other's assumptions and ask clarification. And it's fun. It's amazing. It's amazing to be living through a time like this. And it's amazing to be living through a time like this that has the opportunity set. You know, that's one of the reasons why crypto is adopted so fast. AI gets adopted because you feel like you need to in case you get replaced. Crypto, at least you can make money out of. But this whole thing of where these things are going together is really, really interesting. And people need to, spend time getting up to speed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, guys. Really enjoyed it. Have a good evening. See you guys.